In this special National Hazing Prevention Week episode of the show, Scott and Mac have an honest conversation about their hazing-related experiences, realizations, and education. This discussion kicks off our series designed to shine a light on hazing and hazing prevention and features Rayanne Groover and Evelyn Piazza. Their stories are rooted in unimaginable heartbreak. They both lost their sons, Tim and Max, to hazing in 2017. Yet out of that grief has come purpose and determination. Today, they lead with courage and conviction, raising awareness, shaping laws, and challenging all of us to build safer communities. This is a conversation, and this is a series that's about loss. It's about love, and it's about the legacy that calls us to do more. So whether you're a fraternity or sorority leader, a coach, a band director, or a loving mom and dad, we are really, really happy you're here. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for tapping play on an important series of Leaders, Letters, and Legacy. Hey, what's up, Mac? How you doing today?
I'm great, Scott. You know, I've been living the dream. Been at my fishing camp.
You're not sitting next to the bayou in a tent.
No,
There's
I'm
an
in
actual physical
house
structure
up in the air because we get hurricanes and water comes up and down all the time. Yeah, it's been great and really embracing learning curves. But obviously, I'm not at the camp today. I came home because I've just been really looking forward to our conversation. What have you been up to lately?
Oh man, excited for the next couple of weeks. I get to see some friends and celebrate a Pledge Brothers birthday coming up soon, and excited just to get to spend time with people I really, really love and who've had a massive impact on my life. So, we're in that stage of life. You know, at this point, who your ride or dies are.
I agree with you. I think that life is moving fast and really wanting to treasure every moment with the people we care about is important.
So I love that you're creating some of those moments for you and your people. And I love that Sue and I will get to have one of those moments with my people next weekend. So with that being said, we don't often, in fact, I don't think we've ever done a topic specific show. Our conversation with TJ and Joel was as close to a topic specific show as we've ever done. But today we want to have a conversation specifically about hazing prevention. We've heard enough stories in the time we've been doing the podcast to know that it would be bordering on malpractice if we didn't address this at some point. It just felt like with National Hazing Prevention Week, it felt like this was the right time to have the conversation. And Mac, for our listeners, I think it would be really helpful for them to hear from your perspective. You've worked on a campus. You've worked at a headquarters. You have been the national president for your organizations. You bring a unique perspective to this conversation. So maybe talk about how those three experiences and even your collegiate career, how it informed your take on hazing. And
Well, I think in today's world, when we think about hazing, we think about fraternities and sororities. But my first experience with hazing actually happened in high school. I went to a small private school in our little town of Buras, and freshman initiation was a thing like that our school did. And it was, all the things that you hear today, minus alcohol and drugs, was during the school day. And it was dressing up and humiliation and, pouring things on people and making them do things that were embarrassing and, things like air raid where they've got to hit the ground. And at that moment, I didn't understand. It was a school tradition, right? So much we hear hazing as a tradition. And I remember one of my friends, we grew up in a place where pogie is the most horrible smelling fish when it is cooked down to its oil. And they went and got pogie juice and poured it on them. And I remember the stench in the car. And I didn't really understand. So I go to college, join a sorority. We did have hazing, and it was a campus-wide event. Nobody really ever talked about. We didn't go to hazing education. We didn't have speakers. We didn't have any of that. And so I remember, I went through it. I thought we were supposed to, and that's what we were going to do. And alcohol was not involved, but I remember our initiation wasn't what was special, it was getting through Hell Night. And, and then when the next class came through, I mean, we participated in that as well, and I have to take responsibility, but all we were told was whatever you have them do, you have to do too. So, I guess I'm trying to explain that sometimes we get put in situations where we don't always understand. That
Yeah.
doesn't excuse my participation in any of that. What it does is that I had to become educated, and what actually happened was one of my new member sisters called me one day and said, "Hey," she was in grad school, I was a new professional. She said, "You need to read this book called Broken Pledges by this guy named Hank Newer." And I said, "Okay." She said, "It's about a kid named Chuck who wanted to be in a fraternity, and he had to drink, and he drank himself basically to death, right? And nobody realized they put him to bed. Happens often." Read the story, and then I met his mama, and it changed my life. And ever since then, I've worked really hard to try to make sure that hazing practices aren't a part of any environment that I can help to prevent, right? Conversations, whatever that looks like. So I guess I try to explain it from that lens, Scott, because I don't ever want people to think, oh, Marianne, I mean, I was in school with people, right? For them to be like, oh, we did this and it was so much fun. Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it was something that now we look back and we're like, God, things could have gone really awry and somebody could have gotten hurt or killed. Never the intention. But and I turned it into I wanted to understand ritual and rites of passage. And we all have a need to transition from one phase to the next, right? How can we do that by helping people to learn? There's nothing wrong with helping folks to understand and appreciate and learn about our organizations. You don't have to treat them like shit to do it.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
bottom line for me.
In the simplest of terms, that it's really just about treating other people the way you want to be treated. You mentioned something as you were telling your story there about getting educated. And when I was in school, I didn't really think I came from a hazing chapter. There were a couple of things that were really pushing the envelope, a couple of things that were definitely hazing, but I didn't really see cleaning the house as hazing. It's definitely little h hazing, but that often can escalate into big H hazing. Think back to my initiation day, and I'm all excited because we're actually getting initiated, or we thought we were getting initiated this particular day. And I just remember we did signature books back then where you had to
We
go
did
around and meet all the brothers, have them write a little note
too.
in your book, and I still have mine.
I do too.
And my best friend growing up wrote that initiation is the greatest feeling you'll ever have. And I remember we used to do this thing, not unlike what a lot of groups have had in the past, where you didn't make it, you made it, you didn't make it. There's, this fake national test, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I hesitate to even tell the story because I don't want a college student to hear this and think, God, that sounds like a great idea. But, there's a pretty climactic moment in this experience and where all of a sudden you do realize that you're going to get initiated and it is a complete mind fuck. That's the only way to say it. And I remember what I felt in that moment and I was like, okay, so is that the feeling I was supposed to be the greatest feeling or is that still to come? Then they're like, all right, it's time for our initiation ceremony. So we go upstairs in our chapter room at our house and we go through the initiation ceremony. It's beautiful and it's amazing. And I remember that didn't quite feel as good as what was happened downstairs. And I just remember having somewhere between guilt and confusion is what I remember feeling. Was what I felt earlier that was not being initiated, was that supposed to be better than these other things that were part of our initiation? And I just remember feeling a little bit of guilt in
Mhm.
that because getting the badge, learning the grip, learning all our secrets. None of that felt quite as climactic.
But it's kind of like thinking about this, Scott. You think about it, it's like you're in a relationship, you're getting to know this person, right? And they're saying, I love you. I love you. I can't wait to spend my life with you, right? This is about a journey. Then you say yes, you're gonna make a commitment, you're getting married. But the week before the marriage, I'm gonna treat you like crap. And then that wedding day is just supposed to be magical. And somewhere in the process, we mess up the rhythm of the passage. And we can convince ourselves, "Oh, it's about earning, it's about making them feel special, it's about blah, blah, blah." It's not about them at all. It's about us. A hazer, a person who's hazing, it's about them. It's about the power they feel. It's about, "I have power over you. I'm at a status that you want to be. And in order to get here, you've gotta do whatever I say." That's not brotherhood, that's not sisterhood, that's not team building, that's not teams, right? That's not any of those things. A warped sense of power, and there's no other way to put it. I mean, so have we all probably experienced that? Have we all maybe even done that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the difference is do you continue it or do you stop it? You do everything you can to help that change happen, right? And so, I mean, I go through my own thoughts about I got every book on the shelf, you know? And I think that we all have to continue to revisit in our lives, what is it that we're all put in different situations. How do we use those situations for good? As opposed to whatever else. So I don't know how this will be received. I'm not sure. I'm sure people will have a lot of opinions about what we've said and talked about today. But all I know is that no parent, no friend, no sibling, no anybody should have to go through what Rayanne and Evelyn and their families have gone through. And I don't care what you think about what you know or what you heard or what you think or what stories. At the end of the day, they were two sons who had families and they're not here anymore. And it was all because somebody decided they had power
Yeah.
over them.
First off, you're right. Many of us did participate and have a lot of guilt associated with
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. I know I do.
Yeah. I thought, you know, some of the stuff I thought was amazing. No, it's not. In many cases, we're taking a very fragile mind in the palm of our hands. And especially given this, the mental health crisis our country is in at the moment, that is a risk that is a really powerful risk we should not be taking. From a humanity perspective, we should not be taking
Absolutely.
that risk. So, so there's that. But the other two things that you have me thinking about is having dinner at one of our chapter houses with, I was his assistant, the district chief back in Nashville. Bill Berry was his name, and one of my beta mentors. And he and I are having a conversation with a young man. It's a debate about hazing. And he's heard all the questions he's going to hear. And he finally just slams his hand on the table and just yells, "I gotta earn it," and storms off. And Bill, in this kindest, most tender voice you can imagine, it's like, "Oh, we have to help him understand that you earn your badge every day." And that has stuck with me for over 30 years now. And I don't know if I ever heard him say it before or since, but it was a powerful statement. But the other thing you got me thinking about is when you know better, you do better. And one of the most transformational educational experiences I've ever had was 2 hours with Dave Westall, 1995. And I'm a new consultant on Beta staff. thinking I'm hot shit and everything's good, and frankly thinking that Beta had a monopoly on All Stars. And got there, and this man came out and absolutely rocked my world, and I could not believe how glued to every word I
Yeah.
was. He spoke to us in a way that was not only entertaining and wildly engaging, but fact based. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just an absolute fact based argument that he made against hazing. And that changed my perspective on little h hazing, big H hazing, anything that you could say falls under the umbrella of hazing completely changed my perspective on it from that afternoon on.
Scott, I've even reflected on things like blindfolding, for example. I mean, people, when I start talking about candles and, robes and all the things, people
Yeah.
are like, how do you know all that? But, you know, blindfolding for the longest time, I was like, well, it's about the surprise, right? But when you look at the psychology behind it, the anxiety it creates in folks, is that worth the surprise? Does that does that really create a more connectedness? You understand where I'm coming from? Or, for example, it's the drama. I mean, our rituals were written with drama in them, right? I mean, and there's movement and I mean, when you look at all this stuff, especially from a fraternity and sorority lens, you know, you got to look at periods of time and how all this happened. And it was in the dark and we had candles and, the intimacy. It was supposed to create an intimacy. But then we started making it all of these things and the world changed. And I think that's the other thing. We changed. And like what you just said, when you know better, you do better. We know that. So it's like sports teams. Well, the new people have to do the grunt work. Or is it that the older people do the grunt work with them, right? Because it teaches a shared responsibility. It's like people tell me all the time, I love that my son has to wear a suit and tie and blah, 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 blah. That's awesome. But when they walk in and I'm doing a new member education presentation and the new member educator and the president are in shorts and flip flops, and all the new members are in suit and ties. I appreciate young men knowing how to dress up, young women knowing how to dress up. I understand all of that. I needed some of that. I needed people to teach me that at my age, right? Growing up. But you should be in a suit and tie too. So it's about modeling. I'll never forget, I was at a campus
Mhm.
and the advisor of a fraternity stood at the door, as it was all IFC member, all fraternity members. And he stood at the door and every young man that walked by him shook his hand. And if they had a baseball hat on, he'd pop it off. If they didn't take it off, he'd pop it off, right? Because that was a sign of respect. Today it's different. I understand that. This isn't that long ago. And after he popped off the hat a couple of times, they started taking them off, right? And I think that that's where we're trying to figure out, like, if I ask you questions about the history of your organization, and I'm just having a conversation, that's one thing. But if I'm quizzing you, and then as soon as you involve alcohol and or drugs and non-members, the game changes. And I think we don't talk enough about that. I think we're trying to talk about the law. The laws are the laws, right? Now we're finally, I mean, when I talk about Eileen Stevens, if you haven't heard about Eileen Stevens, please go look her up. Eileen, as a one woman mother of a son that she lost, she's the first person that started really going to legislatures and saying, we don't even have hazing laws. And in many states, and in some states, probably still today, it was a misdemeanor with a $50 fine. You know, I think we have to evolve. And that's the bottom line. Right now we're so desensitized to school shootings and killings and all this kind of stuff. At the end of the day, these people all belong to somebody. Somebody loves them. So we got to change it. We're at a place in our world. We have got to start looking at humans as humans again.
Mm.
Oh, Scott, that's where we are. We've got a lot.
Yeah.
And again, I know that people who are listening to this, you're going to have your own opinions and that's okay. We want, if nothing else, have a conversation. get a cup of coffee, sit down with somebody and say, "Hey, what do you think about hazing? I saw this sports team the other day and all the kids had their heads shaved. What was that about? Where'd that come from?" Just ask a question.
Sometimes it is the question, and I think we generally do a terrible job of asking questions and leading with curiosity these days because you and I can't possibly have differing opinions and be friends. Okay. If we don't feel the same about something, I will fight you. That is the general perspective of our culture right now, which is just unbelievable. In the summers, when you see NFL teams going back to training camp and you see some of the things that their rookies go through and that they glorify on social media
Absolutely.
or at the beginning of the NBA season, and you see what they put their rookies through at a public event, it doesn't seem like much. But if I'm a 15, 16, 17-year-old who is on my high school basketball team, my football team, I think that's a really cool thing to do. And then the next group is like, maybe we should
Up
take it
the
up a
ante.
notch.
Up the
Maybe we should take it up a notch. Same thing goes for our college athletes and our band members and our fraternity and sorority members.
and it's interesting because some people then say, well, the military, what about the military? The military hazes. There's a lot of things that have come to light. And I think people would say, and I've heard some educated people say, the military is a different space in that you're teaching people to go to war. I mean, when you join a fraternity and sorority, you're not teaching people to go to war. And yet, I know the military has also had to evaluate the way that they indoctrinate people. More than anything, it's about, do we evolve as humans and as societies? Do we look at, just because it's always been done, does it make it right? And does it make it effective? And I mean, and I am not speaking from a place of judgment. I am speaking from a place of challenge for myself as well, because I have been through some of these same scenarios and I've had the courage to say things in some situations and I've not in others. And I have admired young people, especially, who have had the courage to stand up and say, this is not okay. And I admire them because I wasn't that person all the time. So I feel like my job as someone who's an educator, who has a platform, who stands on stages and in rooms often, it's my responsibility to help other people be able to ask the right questions and to know when to stop something before someone gets hurt. That's it. I mean, it's that simple.
Thanks for joining us for this powerful conversation on leaders, letters, and legacy. As we reflect during National Hazing Prevention Week, let's recommit ourselves to conversations and choices and actions that build safer, more compassionate communities. Together, we can end hazing, save lives, and ensure that young men and women have an experience that is safe, connection-rich, values reinforcing, and maybe even life-changing for a lifetime. You've been listening to Leaders, Letters, and Legacy. The show is produced by Scott Fussell and hosted by Dr. Ann Callais and Scott Fussell. Background noise is provided by Bailey, Bentley, and Lincoln. Spousal support provided by Sue and Ree. For more, be sure to follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And to help others find the show, be sure to rate and review the podcast before logging out. Leaders, Letters, and Legacy is an L3 Learning production.